These are the key terms when we discuss motion. First, distance, and then we have the displacement, and then we have speed, velocity, and also the acceleration. The branch of physics that deals with the study of motion is known as the mechanics. And we have three different branches of mechanics. First branch is about the kinematics. The second branch is about the dynamics. And then the third branch is about statics. So when we talk about kinematics, that is the description of motion. So we just describe the motion. So how are we going to describe the motion of an of a turtle compared sa motion sa cheetah? So we can say that the motion of a turtle is slow and the motion of a cheetah is fast. So that is a description of motion. That is kinematics. So how are we going to describe the motion of a bicycle compared sa motion sa bus? We can say that the motion of the bicycle is slow and the motion of the bus is fast. So that is a description of motion we just described. However, in physics, that is not how we describe the motion of an object. We describe it by giving it numbers. That is why we have speed. So we can say the motion of a bicycle is, for example, 1 meter per second. That's a description of motion. Or the motion of a bus is 80 kilometers per hour. That is kinematics. You describe the motion. However, there is no explanation. Okay? In kinematics, there is no explanation. You just describe. But in terms of explanation, bakit kaya mas mabilis ang bus kaysa sa bicycle? When we try to explain the causes of motion, that is now dynamics. Okay? So that's the difference between kinematics and dynamics. Another example, how are we going to describe the motion of planets? Alam natin that planets revolve around the sun. That is the description of their motion. Nag-revolve around the sun ang planets. Okay? That is a description. That is kinematics. However, why is it na nag-revolve ang planets around the sun at hindi yung sun ang nag-revolve sa planets? What is the cause? What is the reason behind? Bakit kaya yung moon nag-revolve sa earth? When we dig deeper into the explanation, that is now dynamics. That is why meron tayong forces. Gravity pala. So that is dynamics. Okay? That is the explanation of motion. You explain bakit ba mabilis yung isa kaysa sa isa. You explain kung bakit ba ganito yung speed niya. Okay? Dynamics. So in dynamics, you will encounter forces. And then we have statics also. We have statics. That means it is in equilibrium. Okay? Equilibrium. There is no change in motion. So that is statics. Now, I have introduced sa ating previous discussion these two equations in kinematics. So we have displacement. Again, during our discussion, we will talk about displacement, vectors tayo. But you already know the difference. So we have displacement is equal to velocity times time. This is velocity. Lagyan natin ng arrow to indicate it is a vector quantity. So displacement is equal to velocity times time. Alam na natin yan. When are we going to use this equation? Kailan natin gagamitin ang equation na to? We are going to use this equation when we are dealing with what? When we are dealing with constant motion. Okay? Constant motion. And you know already the definition of constant motion. When we say constant motion, the velocity is the same. Hindi siya nag-accelerate, hindi siya nag-speed up, hindi din siya nag-speed anong tawag niyan? Slow down, speed down. Hindi din siya nag-slow down. Or you can also use that to determine an average velocity. Okay? Average velocity. So if we are going to take for the average velocity, aside from this one, you can also have average velocity is equal to velocity final plus velocity initial over 2. Yan lang ang formula, di ba? Average. So that's the another formula for average velocity. Okay, so yan, pareho lang yan silang dalawa. Now, another equation is acceleration is equal to final velocity minus initial velocity all over time. So ito yung second equation natin. So derive natin ang mga equations na ito And we will arrive with another equation of kinematics. Dadagdagan natin yung mga equations natin. So ito, U times acceleration. By the way, ito lahat, dito lang yan galing sa dalawa ha. Galing lang yan sa dalawa. You just derive. So this is the final equation. 2 times acceleration, this is the displacement, times displacement, is equal to the final velocity squared minus the initial velocity squared. Okay, so ito yung third equation. And then the last equation, we have d, this is displacement, is equal to the initial velocity times time plus 1/2 acceleration times time squared. So these are the equations. Now, when are we going to use these equations? These three equations, itong tatlo. Yan, yung tatlo. If this first equation is used for constant motion or average velocity, these three equations are used when we are talking about constant acceleration. Okay? Constant acceleration. Now, as I have told you, when we talk about motion, it is very important we are going to identify or define our frame of reference, kung saan ba tayo nag-observe. So that is why when we talk about motion, it is very important to represent our frame of reference into Cartesian plane, di ba? Cartesian plane represents our frame of reference. And in that frame of reference, the point of origin of our motion, any motion or any quantity above that is positive, any quantity below should be negative, any quantity to the right should be positive, any quantity to the left should be negative. So for example, if the acceleration is going downwards, it should be negative. Okay, so that is the sign convention in our frame of reference. These are the equations and these are the sign conventions when we talk about our frame of reference. So let's start first with our first problem. Yun. In 0.800 minutes, a sprinter runs 0.450 kilometers to the east. What is the sprinter's average speed and average velocity for the motion? So first step when we solve motion is to draw a frame of reference. Okay, so draw tayo ng frame of reference and usually kasali yan sa pag-grade ko yung pag-draw ng frame of reference. So this is our frame of reference. For example, this is our Cartesian plane. Yan. It is going to the east. So that means if there is a sprinter, so mag-drawing kong sprinter. Ganahan ko drawing bisa di ko kabalo mag-drawing. Ayan, di ba? For example, sprinter na, babae daw ang sprinter na to, babae. Dira, sprinter. So this is the start of our motion and then for 0.800 minutes, nag-travel 0.800 minutes until such time umabot siya dito. Okay, umabot siya dito. Ayan. Di ba? So we are going to input all the given data sa ating problem. So in 0.800 minutes daw, that means time after time is equal to 0.800 minutes. Our sprinter runs 0.450 kilometers to the east. So papuntang east, that is why it is going to the right. So that means our distance from this point to this point, our displacement yan because there is a direction. So our displacement is equal to 0.450 kilometers. Okay, so this represents our frame of reference. This represents our problem. Okay, next is to identify what is required. Sulat agad what is required. Required. So first, the required is the average speed. Average speed. And then the second required is the average velocity. Average velocity is unknown. Average speed is unknown. Okay? And you're very familiar with the formula. However, kindly check the units of the given values. These are not in standard units. Remember our standard units? It should be in meters and in seconds. Standard tayo, SI units. So that means we are going to convert 0.450 kilometers first into meters. How are we going to convert that into meters? Multiply lang by 1,000. Multiply by 1,000, then that means our displacement is, ano ito? 450 kilometers. But take note, in the original value, there is 3 significant figures. So that means this 0 must be significant. Take note of that, ha? Baka makalimutan nyo yan. Significant figures, 3 significant figures. Now, our time is not yet in seconds. So that means we need to convert this into seconds. How are we going to convert that into seconds? Minutes into seconds. How many minutes ba sa isang, how many seconds ba sa 1 minute? 60. So times log 60. And that is equivalent to, pila man eh. It should contain 3 significant figures. So it is not 48 seconds. It is 48.0 seconds. Okay? So again, in conversion, retain the number of significant figures. Okay, nakuha. So we have 48.0 seconds and we have 450 kilometers. Now, we will proceed with our solution. Asa man ako isulat? Dali na lang, no? Solution. It should be meters. Okay? Thank you, thank you. So, nakalimutan ko. First, we are going to solve for the average speed. And remember, our average speed is equal to distance over time. Distance over time. So our distance, since papunta lang man siya in one direction, so that means this is also the shortcut. This is the total path taken. Okay? So our distance is also 450, significant ang 0 meters, divided by, what is the time? 48.0 seconds. And that will give us, pila man eh? 450 divided by 48.
9.38 po.
Very good. It is
38 meters per second.
9.375. The unit sa numerator is meters. The unit sa denominator is seconds. Okay? But remember, we need significant figures, 3 significant figures. That is why it should be 9.38 meters per second. Okay, so our average speed is 9.38 meters per second. Okay, sir, bakit 8? Kasi exactly 5 and then this is add number. Okay? Kaya kung mag-even number ni siya, for example, 6, this should be 6. Ano man siya, basta rule sa rounding off, di ba? Katong sa atong previous discussion. So this is add, and this is exactly 5. So 0.38 meters per second. Now, how about our velocity? How about velocity? Remember, average velocity, dito isulat ha, B. Remember, average velocity is equal to the total displacement divided by the total time. What is our displacement? Our displacement is 450, significant ang 0, meters. Since this is displacement, that means we are going to consider its direction. Asa ano ba yung direction natin? Going to the east, going to the right. So, lagay natin dito, east divided by the total time is 48.0 seconds. And that will give us, of course, the same answer, 9.375 meters per second. And that is going east. So, east. So that means our final answer, the same, 3 significant figures. Our final answer is 9.38 meters per second going to the east. Okay? Sir, is it always the case na kung ano yung speed, pareho lang sila ng number pero lagyan mo lang ng direction? No, hindi siya always the case ha. Pareho lang sila ngayon because this is a straight line. Pero if you notice doon sa video discussion na binigay ko, iba yung numbers dito. Okay? Pareho lang yan ngayon because it is a straight line. One dimension lang man ta. Again, if ever ang itatanong ko sa inyo, for example, convert that into kilometers per hour, you already know how to convert, no? Naaman to sa video how to convert meters per second to kilometers per hour.